How's it going, guys? It's Hank here, back at you guys with another episode of Hitting for the Cycle. And as usual, I am joined by the one, the only, Ryan Touhey. Ryan, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good too, and I must say it has been a very interesting ride to get to the World Series, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. But before we get into all the meat and potatoes of that, I'd like to give you guys a friendly neighborhood reminder. Please don't forget to follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC ETB. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. There's a lot of good stuff you can find on there. You can find the 3&D. You can find Football Friday, which yours truly may or may not have certain appearances on that show too. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention the namesake show of the network, Empty the Bench. So yeah, a lot of good stuff for you. And last but not least, do not forget to follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB network. And of course, make sure you follow the website, etbpodcast.com, for great blogs and more information as well. And there may be a certain glasses guy to the left of Ryan Touhey who may have been writing some blogs or not. I don't know. But there will definitely be more baseball blogs to come. But
to my right.
Without further ado, let's get into the start of this episode, and let's talk about the AL and NLCSs. So, by the way, let me just say this. Ryan, do me a favor. Raise your hand if you thought the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Texas Rangers would be playing each other in the World Series. I put it down, you're lying.
I wasn't even going to lift it up because I said in an episode a couple of weeks ago, Milwaukee and Baltimore.
Yeah, no, I remember that very well. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people thought the Orioles were a World Series contender. Remember that? Oh, Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Yeah, I mean, there were with all the teams, 12 teams in the playoffs. I think it's 66 possibilities for a World Series this year with all the teams. I mean, there was only going to be one possibility that was going to be coming true. And I was way off, and a lot of other people were way off.
I mean, let me put it this way. If there's anybody out there that did have this World Series outcome, then I want whatever lottery ticket you might have.
Oh, sign me up too. These series were just insane. And I did not expect the Rangers and the Diamondbacks to be the ones coming out on top, eliminating the two teams that participated in this World Series the year prior, the 2022 World Series. And yeah, I mean, what can you say? Baseball's a weird game. It's unpredictable. It makes no sense. And that shirt says it all. That's baseball, Susan. Those are true words, let me tell you.
Yeah, I may or may not have worn this shirt on purpose for the sake of this episode. But anyways, let's start off with the ALCS. And you know what I'm going to call this series?
What?
The same thing that I called the 2019 world, or the same thing I called the 2019 World Series. I am going to call it the anti-Wizard of Oz series. Do you want to know why?
Because the road team won every single game.
And unlike, contrary to what Dorothy said, there was a place like home for every team that was playing.
Yeah, I mean, who would have guessed the Houston Astros, for all their dominance that they've had for the past 7 to 8 years, dating back to 2015, who would have guessed that they would lose a best-of-7 series and lose all of their games at home when they've had home field advantage in these best-of-7 series, to do it not once, but twice. 2019 World Series against Washington, like you mentioned, and now the 2023 ALCS against their in-state and in-division rivals, the Texas Rangers. So, yeah, it's weird to say that because, like I said, the Astros have been just dominant for almost a decade now. And that is a dubious distinction and something that I'm sure they are very not proud of achieving.
You want to know another fun fact about that series? The same starter for the 2019 World Series and the 2023 ALCS had the same starter for Game 7. That would be future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that has just coming in full circle. What goes around comes around. And it was a very crazy series. Series kind of started out a little slow in the beginning, but Jordan Montgomery, kind of set the tone in that series in Game 1 that the Rangers were not going to be the Yankees the way that the Astros dominated the Yankees last year. The Rangers were actually going to put up a fight against the Astros and took the first 2 games of the series at Minute Maid Park. The Astros, of course, responded. You knew they were going to have a response. You knew they weren't going to let the Rangers steamroll them or boat race them, as you like to say. And the Astros responded with victories in games 3 and 4, and things really, really heated up in Game 5. That was a wild game. There were, of course, you had that whole incident with Adolis Garcia in Game 5 where he hit a huge 3-run home run off Justin Verlander in, I think it was I think it was the 6th inning, if I'm not mistaken. He hit a 3-run homer off Verlander, and it was a very nice pimp job from Garcia. It took his time walking down the first baseline and pumping up his teammates, and then in his next at bat with the Rangers ahead 4-2 in the bottom of the 8th, he took a fastball right in the ribs from Abreu. I forget his first name from the Astros, but Abreu, their reliever.
Brian Abreu
hit a Garcia in the ribs. Garcia, of course, took exception to it, and then all hell broke loose. The benches cleared. Garcia was getting into it with Martin Maldonado at home plate, and the umpires, of course, ejected Garcia, Maldonado, and Dusty Baker, who flat out refused to leave the bench for like 10 minutes. It resulted in a 15-minute delay. And then, of course, top of the 9th inning, as he's done so much throughout his postseason career, Jose Altuve comes through in the clutch. 3-run home run off Leclerc to give the Astros a 5-4 lead and eventually 5-4 victory. Ryan Pressly continues to remain perfect in his postseason career. I think that made him 14 of 14 in postseason save chances. Watch out, Mariano. And then in
oh no, the easy finger.
I know. I'm kidding. And then but then in Games 6 and 7 back at Minute Maid Park, I think a lot of people thought that it was going to be the Astros' chance to. The Astros obviously had the chance to wrap up the series, and it looked like it would happen. But it became the Adolis Garcia show in Houston for the Game 6 and 7.
Yeah, I don't know what he was drinking, whether he had some of Mike's secret stuff, if you remember from Space Jam, but he absolutely went off. I believe he had 14 RBIs in this series alone, which, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's an ALCS record. And he also drove in 20 runs over the course of the entire postseason. He is tied with, incidentally, his teammate Corey Seager, who also had 20 RBIs in the 2020 postseason. But the only guy that has more RBIs than him is David Freese, who had 23 during the Miracle Cardinals run of 2011. So that has been a historic postseason run for him for sure. And isn't it amazing, Ryan, that two young Cuban outfielders that John Mozeliak traded went on to have postseason success? I'm talking about Randy Arozarena for the Tampa Bay Rays during 2020. And now, of course, you had Adolis Garcia go on to have a monster postseason for the Texas Rangers.
Cardinal fans right now are punching air. That's not a good look for the Cardinals organization, an organization that has obviously been a model of consistency for all these years. And to have the season that they did this year with a last place finish, a very rare last place finish, and a lousy record, it's been a tough pill to swallow, I'm sure, for Cardinal fans this postseason and for the past couple of postseasons as well.
You want to know, actually, you want to know who else is punching air? Us Yankee fans. Do you want to know why?
Because Jordan Montgomery shoved.
Not only Jordan Montgomery, but
Eovaldi. And I have to watch Aroldis Chapman go to another World Series.
Couldn't have happened to a least deserving relief pitcher, if I'm being honest with you.
Oh, I can't stand Chapman.
But I will say this. I got to give credit to not just, it wasn't just Adolis Garcia. Let's not pretend that he was a one-man show. Corey Seager continues to rake in big postseason games. And remember how I said watch out for Evan Carter after how he did against the Tampa Bay Rays in that wild card series?
Mm-hmm.
He continued to get some big hits in the postseason. This is a 21-year-old kid who has not phased whatsoever by the pressure of the postseason.
No, not at all, and he proved it. He had some terrific at bats. He always works the count full to 3-2. Always gets his pitch. I mean, he was phenomenal. He's been phenomenal so far this postseason, and for somebody who just came up, like he came up in September, he's not phased at all by this. And in his interview with I don't know if it was I think it was with Rosenthal after they had clinched the pennant. You can tell in the tone in his voice and his demeanor. He's pumped. He's having the time of his life. He's not afraid of anything, and the Rangers aren't afraid of anything either. They were born. They're built for this. So the Rangers are a very well constructed and sound team all the way around.
Do you want to know another key factor in the Texas Rangers going to the World Series?
Well, we went over strong starting pitching, and we obviously went over Garcia. What else?
Got to go with the manager, Bruce Bochy.
Of course.
He is now. Yeah, I said that in my short video that he was the second manager to take 3 different teams to a World Series. Turns out I was actually wrong. Bill McKechnie took the Pirates in 25 and the Cardinals in 28 and the Reds in 1940 to 3 World Series. The other manager that took 3 different teams to a World Series was incidentally the only other manager besides Bochy to lead the Padres to a World Series. That was Dick Williams. So he pretty much accomplished a very rare feat, and he might be, I want to say, either the second or third manager or possible. Actually, no, I think he'd be the third manager to win a World Series in both leagues should the Texas Rangers win, because I know Sparky Anderson did it. I can't think of the third one off the top of my head.
Yeah, Anderson, I know, was the first one. I think Anderson was the first.
Tony La Russa.
Oh, La Russa, yes.
Tony La Russa.
Yeah, I know Anderson. I think Anderson was the first manager to achieve that, winning World Series in both leagues. And like you said, La Russa and Bochy is trying to become the third man to do that. But I think you can make a valid argument here that what Bochy has done here is a little more impressive than Williams and the other guy who you mentioned,
McKechnie.
McKechnie. I think you can make the argument here that what he's done is most impressive because of the extended playoffs and the extended rounds and the more hurdles that he has to guide his team through. McKechnie, if you won your league, you automatically made it to the World Series. Division play didn't start till 1969, and Williams, when Williams was managing, it was only the LCS and World Series. And so, I think you can make a very strong case here when it comes to Bochy. That's most impressive, considering that now you have a wild card round, a division series round, a championship series round, and then a World Series. Now, obviously, Bochy wants to win the World Series. I mean, who wouldn't, obviously? But the fact that he has guided the Rangers to the World Series, their third pennant since 2010, you got to give him his due. He's a great manager. He's going to be a Hall of Fame manager, obviously, and he's very well deserving of it.
Let me give you another fun fact about Bruce Bochy. Out of all the 10 managers who have won 3 World Series rings, he's the only one that isn't yet in the Hall of Fame.
Ebo.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I think another reason that his managing job with Texas is impressive. Last year, they were 68 and 94.
The year prior, they lost
21. Yeah, that's right. 101 games.
They lost 101 games in 21. And 2 years later, here they are in the World Series.
They had Chris Woodward during those years. So going from Chris Woodward to Bruce Bochy, that's like upgrading from one of the worst seats on an airplane to first class.
Mm-hmm.
So have to give him credit where credit is due. And you also have to give Chris Young credit where credit is due too, because he's He's been the GM since 2020, and he's made so many good, pretty much most of the moves he's made have pretty much worked out and are a big reason why the Texas Rangers are where they are. And look, you can talk about, getting Scherzer and DeGrom and them not being able to contribute as much due to injuries or, in Scherzer's case, ineffectiveness. But let's not forget, it was this. I said that the acquisitions of Montgomery and Eovaldi would be the critical ones.
Yep.
So, anyways, let's talk about another team that has really turned it around. And in 2021, they were even worse than the Rangers.
Yeah,
They lost 110 games, and then last year they were not even a factor. Now the Diamondbacks not only were able to sneak into the playoffs, but improbably, they're in the World Series. Again, if you had the 84-win Arizona Diamondbacks go into the World Series before the postseason started, I want your lottery ticket right now.
Yeah, it's insane. That 6th seed in the National League playoffs is very, very sweet. Maybe that should be the seed that all National League teams strive for next season, because for the second year in a row, the number 6 seed is going to the World Series in the National League. Yeah, the Phillies do it last year, and now it's the Diamondbacks' turn. The Diamondbacks coming into the 2023 season, no one really thought anything about them. Nobody. Remember, it was coming into this season, it was the Padres division. Many people were high on the Padres, and you thought that the Dodgers would have a chance, obviously, to enter the playoffs. Of course, we all know what happened. What was that?
I said not me. I'm sorry, but I have to gloat about a certain blog, which you can learn more about that by clicking this link below. But yeah.
But yeah, the Diamondbacks got off to that good start this season. They started out pretty strong, and then they stumbled through most of the summer. They struggled to find any source of consistency, and then they started to heat up a little bit towards the stretch. And like you said, they just snuck into the playoff picture. They only won 84 games this season, and not many people, I mean myself included, thought that they would do much in the postseason. And some people were saying, this is the most undeserving team to make it into this postseason. But they go on to sweep the National League Central champion Braves in the wild card round. They sweep the Dodgers like no problem in the division series. And then they monumentally upset the defending world champion Philadelphia Phillies in 7 games in the NLCS, with the last 2 wins coming at Citizens Bank Park, arguably the toughest stadium to play in when it comes to postseason baseball, maybe other than Fenway Park. Absolutely amazing.
Tell me if I'm talking out of turn here, Ryan, but this honestly has a 2003 Marlins-like feel to it, the run that the Diamondbacks are making. Because this is honestly the most surprising pennant run I can think of since that team. You could maybe argue the 2011 St. Louis Cardinals, but at least that team still had a lot of playoff performers who had been there before. You still had Albert Pujols on that team. You still had Chris Carpenter on that team. This Arizona Diamondbacks team coming into the World Series was practically unknown.
They were babies. They have so many young guys on this team. A lot of these guys just made their debuts this year. And
yeah, and
amazing.
That Dalton Varsho trade, by the way, paid dividends for the Diamondbacks, because the 2 players they got in return, Yuli Gurriel got clutch hits throughout the postseason. Or no, it was Lourdes Gurriel. Sorry, I'm thinking of Lourdes. And Gabriel Moreno, their catcher, who's going to be behind their backstop for years to come, got clutch home runs against the Dodgers, and then he got that game-winning hit in Game 4, which really was the turnaround of that series. Now, granted, you could argue that Game 3 was a brutal loss for the Philadelphia Phillies, because after dominating the 2 games at Citizens Bank Park, the Phillies definitely had their share of missed opportunities to put the Diamondbacks away. But having said that, I don't know that a sweep was necessarily realistic. I think losing Game 3 was, you lose Game 3 after winning the first 2, you lose Game 3. Not the end of the world. But The next day, with the 5-3 lead, turning the game over to Craig Kimbrell. And by the way, I have to say this. Shame Rob Thompson all you want for putting in Craig Kimbrell. And don't get me wrong, I don't agree that with that decision at all. In fact, I knew once Craig Kimbrell went in, oh boy, the Phillies are in trouble. And guess what happened? Having said that, the Phillies choked big time. At the end of the day, Rob Thompson isn't responsible for grabbing a bat and trying to get runners in scoring position. Rob Thompson is not a major league pitcher. Yes, he made that big gaffe in game 4 by bringing in Craig Kimbrell. At least in my opinion, it was a mistake. But, you know, you still won game 5 the next day with Zach Wheeler, your ace, who was absolutely dominant. You still had 2 chances to put the Diamondbacks away at home. They failed not once, but twice. And your big bats in this series, your Trey Turners, your Bryce Harpers, your Kyle Schwarbers, and your Nick Castellanos. How many hits did they get combined in those 2 games? 1. Only 1 goddamn hit, in the words of Bob Uecker's character in Major League. 1 for 28. That is not a recipe for success. And if you have home field advantage and you have a chance to close out your opponent, you better take advantage of that. And guess what? The Phillies could not do that. And not only that, but guess what? You just suffered arguably the worst collapse in a league championship series since a certain year that you and I like to block out of our memory bank. And if we want to pretend that year didn't happen, probably, again, you have to go back to 2003 with the Marlins.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. And really, like you said, the after game 2 of the NLCS, I mean, last week when I was on here with Nick and when I was on here with the Knicks, I was on here with the Knicks last week. We were talking about the playoffs and how they've gone so far, and we were bashing the Diamondbacks and the effort that they put after the first 2 games. They lost game 2, 10-0. 10-0. I thought it was over. I thought that the Diamondbacks were just going to bend over and just fall flat on their face when the series went to Arizona. But they came back and won game 3 in walk-off fashion, obviously, and they took that game. And I thought to myself, all right, they stole a game. Good for them. They won't get swept. But like you said, game 4 was really the turning point of the entire series. And I really didn't like the way that the Phillies, how Thompson managed game 4. I didn't like how he taxed the entire bullpen practically. The Phillies bullpen struggled mightily in game 4. They could not get a 1-2-3 inning. Every single inning, the Diamondbacks were getting the leadoff man on. And you could see it, the Phillies bullpen was just starting to become more and more fatigued. And by the time it got to Kimbrell in the 8th inning, everything just unraveled. Kimbrell couldn't find the strike zone. And Alek Thomas, of all people, hitting a fastball on the outside part of the plate, hitting it into the pool, and just sending Phoenix into a frenzy. And then, as you mentioned earlier, Moreno with that RBI single to give the Diamondbacks the 5-4 victory. That was stunning and a very deflating and demoralizing loss for the Phillies, that now you just allowed this scrappy underdog 84-win juggernaut of a team to come back and tie the series at 2 games apiece. Now, obviously, the Phillies dominated game 5 and easily won that game. And then you thought, all right, they're going back home to Philadelphia. It should be a cakewalk because nobody can beat the Phillies in Philadelphia. But the Diamondbacks had other plans. They worked great at-bats against Aaron Nola in game 6. They jumped out to an early lead, and they never looked back. And then in game 7, like you said, they got the big hits when they needed to. The Phillies bats went silent. And now the Diamondbacks, for the second time in their franchise history and for the first time since 2001, are in the World Series.
Sorry, you can see why I glared when you said 2001.
Yes. As Yankee fans, we don't like to remember how 2001 World Series ended. But that was a better Diamondback team than this team. But, this team has captured the hearts of all of Arizona. And it really is just an amazing story with all these scrappy young youth ball players. Corbin Carroll, the National League Rookie of the Year, he's going to win the Rookie of the Year, obviously.
25 home runs and 50 stolen bases. That's never been done before by a rookie.
Nope. And Carroll was great in Game 7. He was a big reason why they won. He came up clutch.
Oh my gosh. You could have, if they gave the MVP award to Corbin Carroll, I would not have been upset about that whatsoever. He was absolutely phenomenal. And again, much like Evan Carter, he's a young player that doesn't seem phased by the pressure of a big postseason game. And by the way, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. I think you can also add this to another legacy of Phillies failure. And the reason I wore this hat, look at the side patch I've got here.
93 World Series. That is the worst loss in Philly history, though. Game 6.
Again, I did a blog about that, which you can learn more about by clicking this below. Once again, sorry for that little shameless self-plug, but Nick, if you're listening to this, I'm doing this for the best and trying to help out your network, so you're welcome, America. But in any event, I have to say, the Phillies, it's amazing. For a team that's been in existence since before cars were even invented. Oh my gosh, this is a team that has had so many postseason failures, and not even postseason failures. I think the one loss from that list that I even included that did not happen in the postseason was the 1964 fold, as in PHOLD. So,
did you include 2003 as well?
2003? No, I didn't include 2003.
Because I think they were leading the wild card a little bit towards the end of the season, or were fighting for it, and they lost a critical game in Miami to the Marlins.
They were, but I don't think that series was quite as bad. That loss wasn't quite as bad as the other ones that I put on my list, and not to mention, even if the Phillies had made it to the postseason, I don't know if they would have made the deep run like that Marlins team. Their pitching staff was kind of So again, we'll never know. It's hindsight 2020. But again, if you really look deep into those 10 games 10 particular moments in Phillies history that I mentioned, you could see why I put all of those ahead of 2003 and even ahead of the 1915 World Series and the Whiz Kids getting swept by the 50 Yankees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Phillies, the longest continuous name in professional baseball. They've had a lot of
16 postseason appearances, Ryan.
Yeah, they don't really have the best history to look at. And this is going to go down as one of the worst losses in Philadelphia history. Probably it's in the top 3, if you ask me. They were heavily favored to win this series, obviously. They're the defending National League champions. Nobody thought that the Diamondbacks were going to beat them. I don't care who you are. I know the Diamondbacks beat the Dodgers, but the Dodgers were false gold, or fool's gold, I guess you can say. So, yeah.
Once again, time to toot my own horn about the Dodgers.
So, yeah, it's Diamondbacks.
By the way,
yeah.
Let me just address something that a certain goofball from sports radio said.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mad Dog said he would retire if the Diamondbacks came back and won the series. I only wish he could be a man of his word after that, because that guy is one of the most, as much as I love the guy and his good afternoon, everybody, he is one of the most insufferable personalities in sports media, let me just say.
Yeah, I mean, Russo is very entertaining. I will give him that. You cannot say he's not entertaining.
He is.
He is very entertaining, and he's made me laugh a lot of the times. I'm not going to be ashamed to admit it. He has made me chuckle and laugh. I laugh. His giant rant from 2003 is epic. I always cry tears of laughter listening to that. It's so funny. And, his personality, his outspokenness, and, his passion and his bias, obviously, too. It rubs a lot of fans the wrong way. And that's why a lot of people don't like Russo. And, if there's one thing that I've that I've learned when it comes to the media realm is don't say I will retire if so and so happens, like, because then you're gonna have people coming for your head saying, hey, when are you gonna retire if it actually does happen. I didn't really take his claim that seriously, to be honest, and I thought it was kind of stupid. I didn't really think much about it, so I'm not driving myself crazy over it. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it was dumb of Russo to do that because you knew people were going to be coming for him. He's an easy target. People love to make fun of him, and yeah, I mean, that's all I got to say. Really, I don't really think too much about this.
It's pretty hilarious, but I low-key wish he would retire. That's just me. But speaking of people who are retiring, let's go back to the Astros for a little bit and talk about Dusty Baker. In my opinion, Dusty Baker is one of the best managers in Major League Baseball history. Now, look, a future top 5 reasons blog that could come from yours truly is top 5 reasons you can't blame him for only winning one World Series. But you look at every place he's managed, starting with the Giants, then going to the Cubs, then going to the Reds, the Nationals, and finally the Astros. Every single place he's been, he's led those teams to at least a World Series, or not a World Series, a division title, and he's turned them around and made them better. And he is known for having a very positive influence on Major League clubhouses, and in the end, I think he deserves to be voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Dusty Baker, hands down, one of the classiest people in Major League Baseball history, easily. No, I don't think I've heard anybody say a bad thing about Dusty Baker as a person. He is, like I said, hands down, class act all the way around. He's able to relate to players, and the fact that he's been able to relate to players of different generations, of different eras. I mean, Baker played baseball in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, and he was able to manage players in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. It's remarkable how he's been able to acclimate himself to these different environments and to see him manage in these different eras of baseball and how much the game has evolved all over these years. It's pretty remarkable. And as you said, he has led every single team that he's managed in his career to a postseason, which is a remarkable feat that should not be forgotten. And he has also managed, some great players over the years. Obviously, he managed great players such as Barry Bonds. I mean, Barry Bonds was also a head case to manage as well. You got to give him credit for that. He kept him in check, during his time there. But he managed Barry Bonds. He obviously managed Jose Altuve recently. Managed, obviously, Max Scherzer in Washington. Bryce Harper. His list. Joey Votto. Voices of Lou Sammy Sosa. I can go on and on and on. He's managed some great players over the years. And, he definitely deserves to retire. And I think it's the right time for him to retire. He's 74 years old. I think he deserves to enjoy his retirement. So hats off to Dusty Baker. Hell of a career as both a player and manager, and in the front office as well. He was in the San Francisco. I think he was in Major League Baseball's front office before he was hired as the Giants manager.
Actually, I think he was their hitting coach.
Or their hitting coach, yeah.
He was on the coaching staff when they made it to the World Series in '89, and he ended up getting promoted to the manager. And I think even before he was named the manager, the players in the Giants really seemed to respect him. And I would argue that he's one of the most important managers in San Francisco Giants history. Well, 3 most important managers. I would say him, Roger Craig, and obviously Bruce Bochy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I might be wrong here. Was he the first National League African-American manager, or was that Frank Robinson?
No, that was also Frank Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Frank Robinson also with the Giants.
Gotcha. Yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, Dusty Baker, class act all the way around, and congratulations on an amazing career, future Hall of Famer, and enjoy retirement.
Absolutely. One of the classier people in baseball, and he's very much universally respected. And hey, I hope he if he ends up writing an autobiography, I'll be one of the first to buy a copy of that.
He really should. His story, I'm sure, is phenomenal.
I'm sure he and probably Eric Sherman will get together to write that. And by the way, Sherman's one of the best baseball writers that I've read books from for sure. But anyways, let's talk about the World Series before we get into anything else. So, Texas Rangers against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Again, raise your hand if you thought this was going to happen. Put it down your line.
Interesting World Series, to say the least. Very intriguing World Series. The Arizona Diamondbacks, like I mentioned, second World Series appearance in their history, first time since 2001, one of the most memorable World Series of all time. I don't know if this World Series will be as memorable as 2001, but regardless, it's been a great year for the Diamondbacks, obviously. Nobody expected them to be here at the end of the year. Got a lot of young, scrappy ball players there. And then obviously you had the Texas Rangers, the money constructed team in the offseason, with a lot of mix of veterans and youth, making their first Fall Classic appearance since 2011. And they are looking to finally get that elusive first World Series championship to Arlington. Came very, very close twice in 2011. Couldn't seal the deal. They want redemption this year, and honestly, I think this is their best chance of doing it. I think the Rangers on paper are a better team than the Diamondbacks. Obviously, they have much more star power in that lineup and in that rotation as well. Both of those, I give the edge to the Rangers. Like I said, starting pitching and their lineup, I think is superior to the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks have the edge in the bullpen. The Rangers bullpen is obviously very shaky. And Diamondbacks bullpen obviously held up against the Phillies. They, like I said, like you mentioned, they shut down Philadelphia's big bats in the final two games of the LCS. So I'll give the edge in the bullpen to the Diamondbacks. I think this is a series that can go either way. Like I said, I mean, I'm not as shocked at the Rangers being in the World Series as I am with the Diamondbacks. And, I doubted the Diamondbacks, since the beginning of the playoffs. I didn't think they had much of a chance to do anything in the playoffs. But with that being said, the fact that the Rangers spent so much money in the offseason to get guys like Corey Seager, to get guys like Marcus Semien, to bring guys later on like Jordan Montgomery, Nathan Eovaldi, and even Aroldis Chapman, I think they've worked too hard to finally break this curse of not winning the World Series. And I think the Rangers are finally due for their time this year. I think it is finally their time. So I will give this victory. My prediction is the Texas Rangers will win the 2023 World Series in 6 games.
Texas Rangers in 6 games. You know what? I'm going to agree with that. I think as great of a story as the Diamondbacks have been, I think ultimately the pitching of the Texas Rangers is probably going to be the difference. I think Montgomery and Eovaldi are buzzsaws in that rotation. And not to mention, one of the things that I've really liked about the Texas Rangers all postseason long, they have been really good when it comes to situational hitting. They don't really rely on the long ball. They work the count very well, and they always seem to find their own luck when it comes to moments with runners in scoring position. And if it's not Adolis Garcia, you got to worry about Corey Seager, and if it's not Seager, you've got to worry about Semien. If it's not Semien, you even have to worry about Evan Carter, who, again, watch out for this guy. He might be getting a lot of pitch to hit. Remember, he's only a young player, but he's not fazed by this pressure at all. So and I think the other thing you have to consider is the manager. Bruce Bochy is an experienced pro when it comes to the World Series, and that can't be taken too lightly. Even though I think the Diamondbacks can steal a game or two, ultimately I just feel like the Texas Rangers are the team of destiny.
Yeah, I agree. So how many games do you have them winning in?
I am going to go with, you know what? I'm going to say Texas Rangers in 7.
You're going to give Arizona 3 games. All right. It should be an interesting World Series. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I mean, I doubted Arizona. Like I said, since the beginning of the postseason, I do think Arizona is going to put up a fight. I think they'll put up a respectable fight this World Series. I do expect them to take at least one game in Arizona when the series goes there for games 3, 4, and 5 if necessary. I do expect the Diamondbacks to take advantage there. I could also see the Diamondbacks taking a game or two in Arlington. So, but ultimately, I think the Rangers are going to be just too much to handle.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with that. And hey, looks like another possible urinating free legacy of failure video is going to be deemed obsolete if you and I are right in our predictions.
Yep, we'll see. Still can't believe this is the World Series. It sounds like a random matchup in May.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. Diamondbacks Rangers. Weird World Series.
Yeah, a bizarre world for sure.
I think this you can make an argument here that this is the most unexpected World Series matchup since maybe 2008 when the Rays came out of nowhere to take on the Phillies in the World Series.
I don't know if the Phillies were an unexpected team to get there because the Phillies were a good team anyways. Remember the year before they had that insane September comeback, and even though they got swept in the division series, I think
or maybe 2006 because the Tigers were only 3 years.
Yeah, 2006. I would probably agree with, even though that Cardinals team had made deep runs beforehand, like the fact that they won 83 games, I still to this day believe the Mets should have won that series against the Cardinals, and
Mets fans would say the same thing.
Don't even get me started about that division series between the Yankees and the Tigers. That still
hurts me too.
Oh
my God, Kenny Rogers,
cheater. But anyways, speaking of the Mets, let's talk about Craig Counsell. So apparently he has been given permission to interview for the New York Mets job, and I think if he gets that interview, I think he might possibly. It's looking like he might very well be the next manager for the New York Mets.
Yeah, I could see it, to be honest with you. I mean, the Brewers, had another disappointing end to their season, another postseason failure. And you just wonder how much longer can they keep doing this? I mean, the Brewers, have been pretty consistent since 2017 when they started getting back to respectability. They've obviously returned to the playoffs in 2018. And since then, they've made the playoffs almost every single season, basically. And, this year was a major disappointment for them. They were upset in the wild card series by the Diamondbacks. And you just wonder, is it time to move on from Craig Counsell? I mean, Counsell's been there for a long time, but, they have no World Series appearances to show for it. They're not really getting anywhere with him. So you wonder maybe if a change of scenery would benefit Counsell, if it would benefit the Mets. The Mets obviously are looking to bring some experience and success into their organization. That's why they hired Buck Showalter, who brought both when he was hired 2 years ago. I think the Mets are very high on Craig Counsell, and I think Counsell would really embrace the opportunity to manage in New York, to manage some of these ball players. Mm-hmm. I could see it. I really could. And when it comes to the Brewers, if they lose Counsell, I don't know where they go, but I could see this happening. I could see Counsell managing the Mets.
Yeah, definitely, especially since it's a smaller market team that we don't know if they're going to be able to keep a good amount of their core intact, and this might have been the last chance that the Brewers really had possibly going on a deep run. And I've said before, I get tired every year of like seeing how good their pitching is, only for their hitting to just be a no-show in the playoffs. But they're pretty much they're like a National League version of Moneyball, if that even makes sense. And yeah, I think Craig Counsell definitely would be a good candidate for the New York Mets. He's a guy that's that knows what it takes to win. He's won multiple championships, and we'll see if he's going to be cut out to fit in New York, because obviously New York is a way bigger market than Milwaukee. And, then there's also the question of can Stearns act like a big market general manager? We've seen what's happened with guys like Chaim Bloom, the Red Sox, and
That's another reason why I could see it with Stearns being there.
yeah,
So
I agree.
I do think it's going to happen.
I do too. And speaking of managers, Bob Melvin is now the manager for the San Francisco Giants after leaving the Padres. And this was kind of a stunning turn of events. But I think once you saw that he got permission from the Padres, I think that really kind of made me think, oh, looks like this guy might be the manager for San Francisco. And it's an interesting hire for sure. And I think it definitely is one that makes sense since he's a veteran. He's a veteran manager who's very much been respected. I mean, you can't really hold him responsible for what's happened to the A's at the end of his tenure. I think he saw the writing on the wall with what was going on, and that's why he ended up leaving them in the first place. But for him to go to the Giants, I mean, this is a team that, other than that surprising 107-win season, has been literally the definition of mediocre. And when they fired Gabe Kapler, it was a head scratcher. And you can argue that it was the right decision based on like the fact that maybe Kapler may have lost the team. I don't know if that's true or not, but it did look very strange because he wasn't exactly the reason that they didn't do well with like free agency, Gabe Kapler. But at the end of the day, you're now getting a veteran manager, and teams are seeing how veteran managers are helping them when it comes to making deep runs. I think it's definitely a good move, but there's now a lot more pressure on Farhan Zaidi because he already had to go through one manager, and it was his choice to put Gabe Kapler in. And now that he's firing Kapler, he's admitting that he made a mistake, and we'll see how this move turns out for the Giants.
Yeah, this is an interesting hire. I think it's very rare that managers go from one team to another in the same division.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, Melvin's staying in the National League West, so you can only imagine how he'll be greeted when he returns to Petco Park this season. But yeah, it's an interesting hire. I didn't see this coming. But as you said, I think Melvin, he's a Bay Area guy. He's familiar with the area. He did play for the Giants too. So, I think it's a good hire for the Giants regardless. They definitely have some work to do for 2024 if they do want to compete. I don't really expect them to do too much next year though. But I think this is a step in the right direction for them. I think Melvin's a good manager. He's shown it obviously in Oakland and in San Diego. So I think you can only really go up from here. It really just depends on the construction of the team and how they respond to Melvin, I think, more so than anything else. So it's a good hire, I believe, for the Giants. And as for the Padres, they got a lot of egos on that team. They got a lot of star players on that team. And, there's been talk that, Juan Soto may be dealt. I mean, obviously, we've been seeing some rumors that the Yankees are interested in Juan Soto. So the Padres, it's going to be an interesting offseason for them. They're going to really need a strong individual, a strong personality for that clubhouse next season. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it'll be interesting to see how things play out. And while we have time, let's talk about a little bit of news in Yankee land, I should say. So, first of all, do you want to start with Sean Casey?
Sure, we'll start with that.
So he said on his podcast that he is going to be stepping away due to family reasons, and I don't really see. I'm kind of ambivalent towards this move, to be honest with you, because if I'm being honest, what difference did Sean Casey really make in coming to the Yankees? Their hitting was always an issue, no matter who the hitting coach was. The fact of the matter is, this was not a well-constructed lineup. And
yeah,
until Brian Cashman looks in the mirror and see that this is the case, I really don't think it matters who the hitting coach is.
Yeah, I mean, Casey was put in a very he was put in a tricky situation in the middle of the season, the Yankees hitting was abysmal all year long. They couldn't hit for their life. And, they went from Dylan Lawson, who was very heavily analytical, to a very respectable former major leaguer in Sean Casey, a career 300 hitter. So on paper, the idea sounded good. It sounded promising, but by then the damage was already done. The Yankees showed who they were with Dylan Lawson. They weren't necessarily going to get better, regardless, as like you said, as no matter who the hitting coach was, they weren't going to change their approach. It was instilled in their mind, and it showed. A lot of these guys just had terrible seasons. Nobody really had a good season on offense last year. So, I don't blame Casey for leaving. I mean, whoever is the hitting coach of the Yankees has their work cut out for them. You really need to start from square one, hitting 101, and really try and reteach these guys how to hit, how to make contact, how to put the bat on the ball, how to not swing for the fences, and how to not be super selective, and not how to take pitches right down the middle of the plate. So, yeah, whoever the Yankees hire next year, I mean, they could look internally in the organization. Maybe they'll bring up one of their minor league hitting coaches to the majors. I could see that happening. I've always liked Paul O'Neill as either a coach or a manager, but I don't know if the players would be too soft for somebody of his personality, because I have a feeling O'Neill would call them out and try and get under their skin. I don't know if these guys are tough enough to deal with that necessarily, but we'll see. But yeah, I don't blame Casey for leaving, and it was just a very forgettable tenure as hitting coach. Not many people are going to remember him being the Yankee hitting coach. Within like 5 years, nobody's going to remember that he was the hitting coach for the Yankees.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I'd love for Paul O'Neill to come back, and not going to lie, I think probably it would be good for them to have someone like him whip them into shape. But given that Cashman didn't like that Girardi was being too tough on his players, I don't know if that's going to go over well.
Yeah, I don't know. But some of these guys really need tough love.
Yeah, I'll say. And speaking of tough love, oh boy, are you ready to talk about the lightning rod, as Steve Somers used to call him?
Now we're getting to the good stuff here.
So A-Rod went on an episode of Brandon Tierney and Tiki Barber's show, and he pretty much complained about his exclusion from Monument Park. And he talked about how, or not only Monument Park, but he was also upset about the fact that Joey Gallo got his number 13, a couple years ago. And, it sparked a lot of debate among Yankee fans. And, I'm going to be honest with you, and this is kind of going to surprise you. I can't quite say that I disagree with A-Rod here. I mean, look, did he have a bit of an ego? Did he have an ego, and could he get under people's skins? Yes. Was he kind of a jerk? Mm-hmm. Did he embarrass the Yankees and have a lot of baggage? Oh yeah. Excuse me, something in my throat. Yeah, that must have happened a lot when I was cheering for A-Rod during the time he was a Yankee. But in any event, I have to say this. If you really look past the baggage, A-Rod statistically is either at or near top 10 in terms of greatest Yankees of all time. Now, I don't know that I would put him on my list. I would probably have him just getting edged out by, say, Bernie Williams or Don Mattingly. But the fact of the matter is this. You look at his failed moments in the postseason in 2005, 2006, and 2007, and then even after 2009. Yeah, it's understandable if you want to blame A-Rod for not coming through in the clutch. But to be fair, when you really look at those years, he was far from the only Yankee that really failed to deliver when it mattered the most during those bad moments in the postseason. And when you think about the 2009 World Series, sure, he didn't win the MVP of the ALCS or the World Series, but Can you honestly sit here, look me in the eye, and tell me that the Yankees win that World Series without A-Rod? I don't think so. Because if it wasn't for him, they're staring at a 2-1 deficit against the Minnesota Twins if he doesn't hit those home runs in games 2, which I was at, by the way, and game 3 in Minnesota. And if he doesn't hit that home run in game 2 against the Angels, we're looking at a tied series going into Anaheim. And the Yankees had struggled in that ballpark in years past. And that was the team that scared me the most that postseason. And then it was his home run off the camera that really, kind of started to change the momentum for the Yankees as the series went to Philadelphia in 2009. So, for better for worse, he won 2 MVP awards. He's the greatest third baseman in Yankee history. I can't say his case isn't valid.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to Alex Rodriguez, I'm ambivalent. There were times where I loved him, and there were times where I couldn't stand him. And I think a lot of Yankee fans felt that way when it came to his tenure. As the years have gone on since he was forced into retirement by the Yankees in 2016, I've come to appreciate his abilities much more. And at the time, his postseason failures definitely weigh down on him, and understandably so, when he's arguably the greatest baseball player, or one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And when he was failing to come up in these clutch spots, I mean, from 2004 to 2009, before he knocked in a run in game 1 in 09 of the division series, I think he had a long drought where I think he went 0 for like 30 or 40 something with men on base in the postseason. He had a long drought. But like you said, he set the tone for the Yankees in 2009 that they were on a mission and they were not going to let anybody get in their way. And yeah, he obviously hit all those big home runs that you mentioned in that postseason. He was a big reason why they won that World Series. He was arguably the biggest reason why on offense they even made it to the World Series. He was their best hitter in both the ALDS and the ALCS. Didn't have the best World Series, but everybody else picked him up back then because he already did all the work. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Joey Gallo disgraced number 13. You thought A-Rod disgraced number 13. Joey Gallo couldn't hit anything. Give me a break. Gallo was awful. And the Yankees, when it comes to retiring numbers, it's also kind of a joke. I mean, Roger Maris's number should not be retired. Reggie Jackson's number should not be retired. Billy Martin's, in my opinion, should not be retired. And, Jackson only played 5 seasons with the Yankees, and 1 was a strike-shortened season. So 4.5, basically. So, if those numbers are retired, then, in my opinion, A-Rod's is more deserving than all 3 of them. And the fact that all 3 of them are retired and A-Rod's isn't is a little bit of a joke to me. Like I said, I'm not the biggest A-Rod fan. He drove me crazy at times growing up. He was a very polarizing figure, like you mentioned. He has an ego still to this day. I think he'll even admit it. But at the end of the day, he did deliver. He did have 2 phenomenal seasons. His 2007 season is one of the greatest seasons anybody has ever had. It was phenomenal. And yeah, I mean, many Yankee fans are still hard on A-Rod because they felt they should have won more than just 2009. I personally think that they should have won more than just 1. And I think A-Rod would tell you too, they should have won at least 2 or 3 more World Series during his time as a Yankee. But it is what it is. He was still, a hell of a ball player. And at the end of the day, his number is definitely more deserving of retirement than the Yankees that I just mentioned. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I would agree. The Yankees have had a weird way when it comes to retiring numbers. And again, basic math is pretty much on not only his side, but my side with regards to that argument too. Mm-hmm. He's in the top 10 when it comes to home runs and RBIs in Yankees history. He's the greatest third baseman of all time. Say what you want about the guy, but there's no denying that he's a Yankee legend. Like, the facts are the facts. But in any event, that's pretty much all we have for this episode of Hitting for the Cycle. Ryan, always a pleasure to have you on, my guy.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
And of course, before I sign off, let me give you guys a friendly neighborhood reminder. Please don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias. You can find us on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. As I said, we've got a lot of good stuff coming for you guys, so you would be doing yourself a disservice if you were not checking it out. And obviously, do yourselves another favor. Please don't forget to follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. Hit that big red button down below. Ring that bell if you want notifications for any show that's coming up. And of course, leave a comment, like it, share it to all your friends. And last but not least, please follow the website, etbpodcast.com, for some great blogs, some from yours truly, and more information as well. But in any event, that is going to wrap it up for episode number 17 of Hitting for the Cycle. On behalf of Ryan Touhey, I'm Hank Indictor. We will see you guys next week. So long, everybody.